I never thought much about playlists until I got one at 3 in the morning from someone I was trying very hard not to fall in love with. His name was Miles, and we worked together at this independent bookstore downtown, the kind with creaky floors and a cat that judged your reading choices. I'm Owen, by the way, and I've always been the type to overthink everything, to read into small gestures and then convince myself I'm imagining things. But this playlist, this collection of songs that showed up on my phone screen while I was lying awake in the dark, this wasn't something I could explain away. It started 6 months earlier on a Tuesday afternoon during the fall rush. Miles had just transferred from the other location across town, and my manager introduced us during my shift. He had this way of smiling that made his whole face change, like he was letting you in on a secret. Dark hair that fell into his eyes, which he'd push back absently while he talked. He wore band shirts under flannel button-ups and had opinions about everything from coffee preparation to the Oxford comma. Within a week, we'd fallen into this easy rhythm of working together, restocking shelves and debating whether audiobooks counted as real reading. The thing about working retail is that you end up having a lot of small conversations that feel bigger than they should. We'd talk while sorting returns, while setting up displays, during the slow hours on weekday mornings when the store was empty except for the regulars. And somehow, music kept coming up. I'd mention a song I'd heard on the drive to work, or he'd quote lyrics while shelving poetry books. And we'd end up in these sprawling discussions about what we were listening to and why. I remember the first time I really noticed it was happening. I was alphabetizing the fiction section, and this old Bon Iver song came on the store's speakers. I said something casual like, "God, I haven't heard this in forever. This whole album got me through sophomore year of college." Miles looked up from the cart he was unloading, and something shifted in his expression. He asked what I meant, and I ended up telling him about this terrible breakup I'd gone through, how I'd listened to that album on repeat while studying for finals, how certain songs could still transport me back to that tiny library study room where I'd spent so many nights pretending to focus on Renaissance literature. He listened in this intense way he had, like he was actually absorbing every word instead of just waiting for his turn to talk. Then he told me about the music that had gotten him through his own difficult times, this mix of indie folk and alternative rock that matched his whole aesthetic. We stood there in the fiction aisle talking for probably 20 minutes until a customer interrupted us. After that, it became our thing. I'd mention songs constantly, not even meaning to. A lyric would pop into my head, or I'd reference an artist while making a point about something completely unrelated. Like I'd say, "This reminds me of that Hoser song about," and then explain whatever metaphor I was reaching for. Or I'd hum something while opening boxes, and Miles would recognize it, and we'd end up discussing the entire discography. It was easy and natural, the way the best conversations are, where you're not performing or trying to impress anyone, just sharing pieces of yourself without thinking about it. What I didn't realize was that he was keeping track. Every single song, every casual mention, every half-remembered lyric, every, "Oh, I love this one," when something came on shuffle. He was collecting them all like someone gathering wildflowers, and I had no idea. Things between us had gotten complicated by then, at least in my head. I'd catch myself watching him when he was focused on something, noticing the way he bit his lower lip when he was concentrating, or how he'd tap his fingers against his leg when he was thinking. We'd started taking our breaks together, sitting in the back room or outside on the bench by the loading dock, talking about everything and nothing. He told me about growing up in a small town and feeling different, about moving to the city for college and finally feeling like he could breathe. I told him about my family, about coming out to my parents and having it go better than I'd feared but worse than I'd hoped, about building a life here that felt like mine. There were these moments that felt charged, weighted with something unspoken. Like when we'd reach for the same book and our hands would touch and we'd both freeze for just a second too long. Or when he'd laugh at something I said and lean in close, and I'd smell his cologne mixed with old paper and coffee, I kept telling myself I was reading too much into it, that he was just friendly, that I was projecting my own feelings onto innocent interactions. My roommate Kai told me I was being an idiot. We were in our apartment one night, and I was doing that thing where I overanalyze every interaction, trying to figure out if Miles was into me or if we were just becoming really good friends. Kai, who has known me since freshman year and has witnessed every romantic disaster I've stumbled into, just looked at me over his laptop and said, "Owen, the guy literally rearranged his schedule to work the same shifts as you. He brings you coffee made exactly how you like it. He remembers things you mentioned once in passing. Either he's into you or he's training to be a professional best friend, and I'm pretty sure it's the first one." But I couldn't be sure. That's the thing about queer relationships, at least in my experience. There's always this layer of uncertainty, this fear of misreading signals and ruining a friendship by assuming something that isn't there. So I kept my feelings to myself, treasured our friendship, and tried not to think too hard about the way my heart sped up every time I saw his name on my phone. We'd started texting outside of work, which felt significant even though I tried to play it cool. Good morning messages, random thoughts throughout the day, links to articles or memes we thought the other would appreciate. Late-night conversations that started about something mundane and spiraled into deeper territory. He told me about his complicated relationship with his family, about feeling like he'd disappointed them by not becoming whatever they'd envisioned. I told him about my anxiety, about the therapy I'd been in for years, about learning to be gentle with myself. One night around 2 a.m, we ended up on the phone for 3 hours. It started because he'd texted asking if I was awake, saying he couldn't sleep and his mind was racing. I called him instead of texting back, and his voice, when he answered, sounded vulnerable in a way I'd never heard before. We talked about fear and hope and what we wanted our lives to look like. He told me he'd been feeling stuck lately, like he was waiting for something to begin but didn't know what. I admitted that I knew exactly what he meant, that I'd been feeling the same way, like I was standing at the edge of something but couldn't see what was on the other side. There was this pause after I said that, this moment of silence that felt heavy with meaning. I could hear him breathing on the other end of the line, and I wondered if he could hear my heart pounding. Then he said, "Owen, and stopped. Started again. "I really value our friendship. You've become really important to me." And I said, "You too," because what else could I say? That I was falling for him, that every time he smiled at me I felt like I was standing in sunlight, that I went to sleep thinking about him and woke up the same way. After that phone call, something shifted. We were more careful with each other, like we were both aware we were walking on unstable ground. The easy banter was still there, but underneath it was this current of tension, of things unsaid. We'd have these moments of intense eye contact, and then one of us would look away. Our breaks together became both the best and hardest part of my day. Then came the Friday that changed everything. We were working a closing shift together, just the two of us for the last hour after everyone else had left. The store was quiet, and we were supposed to be doing closing tasks, but we kept getting distracted. We'd ended up in the music section, because of course we had, and Miles was showing me this album he'd just discovered. He was so animated when he talked about music. His whole body engaged in the conversation, and I was trying so hard to focus on what he was saying instead of just watching him. He pulled out his phone to play me a specific track, and as he was scrolling through his library, I saw it. A playlist titled Owen with a small heart emoji next to it. Just a glimpse before he quickly moved past it, but I saw it. My name, a heart, and what looked like a substantial number of songs. My brain short-circuited. He noticed my expression change and asked if I was okay, and I lied and said I was fine, just tired. But I couldn't stop thinking about it for the rest of the shift, a playlist with my name on it. What did that mean? Was it songs that reminded him of me? Songs he wanted to share with me? I drove home in a daze, Kai's words echoing in my head about Miles being into me, and this tiny piece of evidence that possibly I wasn't imagining things. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay in bed replaying every interaction we'd ever had, looking for clues, trying to decode what a playlist meant in the grand scheme of things. It was probably nothing. It was probably everything. I was going in circles, and by 2 a.m, I was staring at my ceiling, feeling like I might vibrate out of my skin. That's when my phone lit up. A notification from Spotify. Miles had shared a playlist with me. My hands were shaking as I opened it. The title made my breath catch. Every song you ever mentioned, I kept track because I couldn't help it. 147 songs. I scrolled through them in disbelief, recognizing every single one. The Bon Iver album from that first real conversation. The Hozier song I'd referenced while discussing metaphors. A Taylor Swift deep cut I'd mentioned once, literally once, while we were pricing used CDs. Songs I'd hummed, songs I'd quoted, songs I'd said reminded me of specific memories or feelings. 6 months of casual mentions, all collected and organized and saved. My phone buzzed again. A text from Miles. I know it's late. I'm sorry. I've had this playlist for months and kept chickening out about sending it. But I can't keep pretending that we're just friends when I notice every song you mention, when I remember every tiny detail you share, when I think about you constantly and have to stop myself from texting you every random thought that crosses my mind. I'm terrified of ruining what we have, but I'm more terrified of never telling you that you've become the most important person in my life. If I'm completely misreading this and you don't feel the same way, we can pretend this never happened and go back to normal. But I had to tell you. I had to try. I read the message 5 times, then 10, making sure I wasn't hallucinating. Then I did something that surprised even me. I called him. It rang once before he picked up, his voice uncertain. "Owen, you made a playlist," I said, and my voice came out rough with emotion. "You remembered every song?" "Every single one," he confirmed quietly. "Is that weird? It feels weird now that I've actually sent it." "God, I shouldn't have—" "Miles," I interrupted. "I'm falling in love with you. I've been falling in love with you for months." I was just too scared to say anything because I thought I was imagining the way you looked at me, the way our conversations felt different than talking to anyone else, the way being around you made everything better. The silence that followed lasted maybe 3 seconds, but felt eternal. Then he laughed, this breathless, relieved sound that made my chest ache. "You're falling in love with me?" "Have been for a while now," I admitted. "Probably since you brought me that coffee and remembered I liked oat milk and cinnamon, which I'd mentioned exactly once 3 weeks earlier." "I remember everything you tell me," he said softly. "I can't help it. You say something and it just stays with me. Like how you organize your books by color at home even though you know it's impractical, or how you always smell books before you read them, or how you get this specific expression when you're trying not to laugh at something you think you shouldn't find funny." We stayed on the phone until the sun came up, talking about everything we'd been holding back. He told me about the first time he realized he had feelings for me, how it had hit him all at once during a random Tuesday afternoon when I was passionately defending the merits of romance novels to a snobbish customer. I told him about all the times I'd almost said something, almost reached for his hand, almost closed the distance between us. "So what now?" he asked as dawn light started filtering through my curtains. "Now I'm going to listen to all 147 songs," I said, "and then maybe you could come over. We could listen to them together." He arrived an hour later with coffee and bagels, looking nervous and hopeful. We sat on my couch with the playlist on shuffle, and every song felt like a memory, a moment between us preserved in melody and lyrics. Some made us laugh, remembering the contexts in which I'd mentioned them. Others were more poignant, songs tied to vulnerable conversations and difficult confessions. When a particularly emotional song came on, one I'd mentioned during that late-night phone call about fear and hope, Miles reached for my hand. Our fingers intertwined like they'd been doing it forever, and he looked at me with such open affection that I forgot how to breathe. "Can I kiss you?" he asked, and I nodded because words seemed insufficient. Kissing Miles felt like coming home and setting off on an adventure at the same time. Familiar and thrilling, comfortable and exciting. We pulled apart eventually, both smiling like idiots, and he rested his forehead against mine. "I can't believe you kept track of every song," I murmured. "I can't believe you didn't notice," he replied. "I was so obvious about it. Every time you mentioned music, I'd immediately add it to the playlist. I've been curating this thing for months, organizing it, reordering it, trying to make it perfect." "It is perfect," I assured him. "It's the most romantic thing anyone's ever done for me." We spent the whole day together, listening to the playlist, talking, kissing, existing in this bubble of new relationship energy where everything felt magical and significant. By the time evening rolled around, we'd made it through maybe half the songs, getting distracted by conversations and each other. Kai came home around 7 and found us tangled together on the couch, Miles playing with my hair while I had my head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat and some indie song I'd apparently mentioned in passing. Kai took one look at us and said, "Finally, do you know how exhausting it's been watching you two dance around each other for months?" That was 4 months ago now. The playlist has become our thing. Miles keeps adding to it every time I mention a new song, and I've started doing the same for him, keeping track of his musical references and building my own collection of pieces of him. We'll put it on during lazy Sunday mornings, during dinner preparations, during long drives to nowhere in particular. Sometimes I still can't quite believe it's real, that this person I was so afraid of losing by being honest about my feelings is now the person I wake up next to. The person who knows every song that's ever mattered to me because he paid attention when I thought no one was listening. The person who showed me that sometimes the scariest thing, being vulnerable and honest about how you feel, is also the thing that leads to the most beautiful outcomes. We still work together at the bookstore, which everyone agrees is adorable and occasionally nauseating in equal measure. We still take our breaks together, but now we hold hands and steal kisses when we think no one's looking. We still have our long conversations about everything and nothing, but now they happen curled up together in bed in the quiet hours of the night when the world feels like it belongs only to us. The playlist, which now has over 200 songs and counting, has become the soundtrack to our relationship. Every song is a memory, a moment, a piece of our story. And sometimes, late at night when we're lying together in the dark, Miles will pull me close and whisper, "I'm adding another one." And I'll ask what song and why, and he'll tell me about some small moment from our day that reminded him of a specific melody or lyric, and I'll fall in love with him all over again. Because that's what he does. He pays attention, he remembers. He collects the small pieces of me I scatter without thinking and treats them like they're precious. And in doing so, he showed me what love could look like when you find someone who truly sees you, who values the little things, who makes a playlist at 3 in the morning because they can't keep their feelings inside anymore. I never thought much about playlists until I got one from Miles. Now I think they might be the most romantic thing in the world. These collections of moments and memories set to music, these tangible proof that someone was listening, that someone cared enough to remember, that someone fell in love with you one song at a time. Total char. Count 17,847.